You can't set him up. My God.
Hi Crypt Keepers, thank you so much for tuning into Amy's Crypt. In anticipation of the release of The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, we will be exploring this fascinating and terrifying case in full detail. So what is the true story behind The Devil Made Me Do It? We'll delve into the alleged possession of David Glatzel, the exorcism that involved Ed and Lorraine Warren, the murder of Alan Bono, and of course the first time that demonic possession was used as a defense in a court of law in the USA. To fully understand this intricate case though, we need to start right from the beginning. The year 1980 saw the young couple Debbie Glatzel and Arne Johnson acquire a new rental property. This rental property came at great cost to the couple, but they were super excited to move in. There was a bit of cleaning and work to be done at the property before it was livable and the couple could move in. So Debbie and Arne visited along with Debbie's younger brother David to get to work and start cleaning. David was an 11-year-old boy who's described as a really good kid and always happy to help people out. Paranormal activity would be reported pretty much straight away as soon as David entered the house. He did go to the master bedroom where the previous tenants had left behind a bed, a waterbed in fact, and I only bring this up just because there's a scene in the trailer for The Conjuring 3 that involves the actor portraying David, and it's super terrifying what goes on with this waterbed. Pretty soon David would leave the house because he got spooked. He would tell his older sister Debbie that he sighted a scary looking old man who told him to beware. Now Arne and Debbie kind of wrote this off as just a kid being a kid kind of behavior and just coming up with an excuse so that he didn't have to help them with cleaning. After spending this first initial day of cleaning, Arne, Debbie and young David returned to Debbie's mother's house. There, Judy Glatzel had offered to put up the young couple while they acquired the new home and just found their feet. Scarily enough for David, this wasn't the last time that he would see the old man from his sister's new house, for that old man followed him home. That night, David reported to see this old man, though he looked different to how he appeared the first time he was sighted. He reported that his skin appeared black as if it had been charred or burnt, and he was barefoot, but instead of human feet, he actually had feet like a deer. They were hooved. Although the adults in the household heard some kind of disturbing, very strange noises coming from the attic in the house that night, it was only young David who had sighted this old man, who they would soon come to nickname and know as the Beast. Judy Glatzel herself would later cite and describe this entity, the Beast, as a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features and jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns and hoofs. David would also mention a very specific incident to Debbie and Arne this night about an animal inside their house scratching at their doors, and this ended up being some form of foretelling, as the next day when the couple went back to their new rental property, the inside of their doors were all scratched up, just as David had described. This spooked everyone enough that they made the decision not to move into this particular house despite having laid down a considerable amount of their own money to secure that property. David's condition deteriorated from here, and he claimed that this terrifying old man from the rental property would visit him regularly and even show himself as a demonic appearing beast. This beast also sometimes spoke phrases to David in Latin, threatened to hurt him, and worse, even steal his soul. David would develop petrifying night terrors, exhibit strange behavior that was very uncharacteristic of him, and oftentimes would be covered in scratches and bruises that were completely unexplainable. In fact, his mother Judy, his sister Debbie, and her partner Arne all claimed to have witnessed David being attacked as if he was being strangled or beaten by an invisible entity, and sometimes after these attacks, David would even have red marks upon his skin. Additionally, David had begun to growl or hiss as if he was some kind of animal, and would often recite Bible passages or other pieces of literature that a child of that age just would not know. This obviously would have been distressing for the family and of course David, so the church was called and consulted, and from here on out is where Ed and Lorraine Warren become involved in the case. David had already endured 12 days of these menacing visions and attacks before the Warrens could get involved. Lorraine Warren recalls visiting for the first time and stating that David was acting more like a creature than an actual child. She also stated that there was a tremendous kind of tension within that house, something that you feel like you could cut with a knife. Lorraine also claimed that during that initial visit, she sighted a black sort of mist form right next to David, and from that point on, she knew that they were dealing with something quite malevolent. Supposedly, some work was done just to ensure that all this happening to David wasn't of psychological origins, and then from there, an exorcism was recommended. Typically, when an exorcism is performed, the church will investigate before they get involved themselves and approve the exorcism. But Ed and Lorraine Warren felt like this child was in grave danger, so they recommended that he have a minor exorcism, which is something that just could be expedited so David wouldn't be hanging around as long waiting for an exorcism to be performed on him. The situation in this household just grew increasingly dire. David would convulse at random intervals, so at all times a member of the family had to be watching over him, and this only just pushed everyone to physical exhaustion and just to their breaking point. Finally, David was able to have his exorcism performed. This was attended by his mother, his sister Debbie, and her partner Arnie, as well as a number of priests and of course the Warrens. Now, over the course of the next few days, several exorcisms were performed, and apparently things got pretty intense. Lorraine has previously described some of this exorcism process, and during which she stated that David actually levitated, he stopped breathing for a period of time, and he even displayed some precognition abilities, even foretelling the future murder that Arnie would one day commit. It was during this whole ordeal that Lorraine became fearful that something bad might happen, so she actually contacted the Brookfield police just to warn them that things there were getting pretty dangerous. Obviously, this must have been a stressful time for everybody involved. You can just picture a child being attacked by something that you can't see. You can't control it, you can't stop it. There's not really a whole lot that you can do. You can picture caring for this child as well and being so helpless. And this is said to have been something that affected Arne Johnson to the point that he decided to take things into his own hands. Allegedly, during the exorcism, Arne actually challenged one of the demons inside the child, David, and asked it to take him on instead of David. The Warrens do claim that they had previously warned Arne not to do this, warned him against challenging the demonic, but obviously feeling helpless and wanting to help, this is something that Arne did anyway, and it was probably a choice that he would come to later regret. And it was just mere days later that this incident came back to haunt Arne, so he set off in his car to run some errands. Supposedly when he did, the car's engine started to race, he lost complete control of the car, he sighted a figure, and the car crashed directly into a tree. Now, Arne is very lucky to have escaped this unscathed and with his life. Now, it makes sense that this experience shook Arne to the point that he decided he would return to the rental property to investigate a well that he had heard David talking about. Now, this well was supposed to be a kind of portal that the demon would take to travel between its world and our world. That was probably a mistake on Arne's part, because when he returned to the property, he found the well, he actually encountered the demon. Now, this is his last encounter that he can recall with the demon, and he states that he made eye contact with it, and that is the point where he became possessed himself. After all this, Debbie and Arne move out of her mother's house and they move into an apartment that they rent from a man named Alan Bono. Not only was Alan Debbie's landlord, he was also her boss, because he was managing the dog grooming business that she would work for. And it wouldn't be too much longer after this move that Alan would die at the hands of Arne. It's also worth noting that at this stage, Arne had started to display some strange behaviour of his own that was almost reminiscent of how David had earlier been acting. On the 16th of February 1981, Arne called in sick to his employer at the Right Tree Service. He then went on his way to spend his day with his girlfriend, Debbie Glatzel, at her employer, the Brookfield Boarding Kennels. In addition to Debbie, Arne would be joined by Wanda and Janice, his 15 and 13-year-old sisters, as well as Mary, his 9-year-old cousin. The group would then go on to meet Alan Bono for lunch at a local bar, where Alan would begin to drink excessively, though this wasn't some behaviour that was totally out of the norm for him. Following lunch, this group returned back to the kennel where they would spend much of their afternoon. At some point though, Debbie took all of the girls to go and get pizza, But reportedly during this time, she started to feel as though there was some kind of tension building and wanted to hurry back to the kennels because she just felt like something was off between Arne and Alan. Upon the girls' return to the kennels, Alan asked them all to come upstairs to his apartment, which existed right above the kennels. So they went up, and it was here that apparently Alan became very agitated and was kind of angry and was getting very loud. So Debbie asked all of the girls to leave his apartment and go downstairs, but it was at this point that Alan grabbed a hold of Mary, the 9-year-old. Debbie eventually diffused this situation, getting him to let go of Mary, but by this time Arne had arrived. Debbie stood herself in between Arne Johnson and Alan Bono while Wanda attempted to hold Arne back, but it was at this point where he started to snarl and growl, just displaying animalistic behavior. He pulled out a 5-inch pocket knife that he had on his person, and an altercation took place. Bono was stabbed 4 or 5 times with this knife, suffering mostly wounds to his chest area, with one of those wounds puncturing his stomach through to the base of his heart. It was these wounds that would later end his life. Arne Johnson claims to have no recollection and no memory of this incident. Following the attack, he simply walked off into the forest, and he was detained later 3 kilometers away from the crime scene and then placed in a correctional facility. This was also to be the first documented murder in Brookfield, Connecticut history. Lorraine Warren contacted the Brookfield police the day after this murder, wishing to inform them that Arne Johnson had been demonically possessed at the time of this crime. This statement was actually used by Martin Manella, Johnson's lawyer, making it the first case in United States history where demonic possession was used as a defense. Great public interest then swirled about the case, and then the media jumped on board and they dubbed this the Demon Murder Trial. Interest in this case even extended internationally, and Arnie's lawyer visited England to consult other professionals over there who had worked on similar cases, though neither of the cases over there were put to a jury such as Arnie's would be. Plans to fly in exorcism experts from Europe and even subpoena the priests that were involved in David's exorcism if they refused to cooperate were even made. October of 1981 saw this trial take place at the Connecticut Superior Court of Danbury. Here, Manella attempted to submit his plea of not guilty due to demonic possession at the time this crime was committed. The judge, Robert Callahan, rejected this defense, claiming that such a defense could never hold up in a court of law because you just couldn't prove the evidence. He went on to describe it as irrelevant and unscientific. Due to this, the defense changed, and it went on to state that Johnson acted in self-defense. The jury would deliberate over this case for 15 hours over the course of 3 days, but were not legally able to consider demonic possession as an explanation for the murder. After much deliberation, Arne Johnson was convicted of first-degree manslaughter and was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. During his time in prison, Arne actually worked to gain his high school diploma and several other educational certificates. Because of his good mental standing and being a model prisoner, he was released after just 5 years in prison, and he and Debbie were also able to get married. This is all quite an incredible story, but I do want to note that one of Debbie's brothers, Carl Glatzel, was not happy with it, and he was not happy with the involvement of the Warrens. So much so that he actually sued the Warrens for profiting off of this ordeal because they had released a book about it, and he just claims all of the events that happened were all fake and all fabricated. On the other hand, we have Debbie and Arne, who stand by the Warrens and say that everything they say is all fact. That is exactly what happened, and they describe Carl's behavior as a simple money grab trying to sue the Warrens. So what do you guys believe? Do you think this all could have happened, or are there maybe just some aspects of the case that you believe happened? Let me know, I'm really interested. Leave me a comment below. I'd also love to know if you guys are excited for the movie. For me, as a horror fan, a lover of the paranormal, and someone who really enjoyed all of the other movies in the Conjuring franchise, I am really, really excited for this one. I'm also interested to see how they portray the characters and the timeline of everything that has happened, because there's so many moving parts and this case is so intricate. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it all on the big screen. I kind of hope that you guys are excited for it too, so let me know, leave me a comment. I also really liked the trailer. I thought it was really well done, and I liked that little nod to The Exorcist that they incorporated in there as well. Anyway, this is such a fascinating case and I am looking forward to seeing it on the big screen. I hope that you guys are too, but I also hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, share and subscribe. That really helps me out. If you want to do any more reading on this case or haunted places from around the world I visited, head to my website AmysCrypt.com. You can also follow me at AmysCrypt on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok, and I post bonus content on my YouTube memberships and Patreon, which are linked below. But thank you so much for watching, Crypt Keepers. Until next time.